Good evening. Welcome to the Village Board meeting, Pleasantville, New York. Today is Monday, February 8. If you are listening live on Monday, February 8, we invite you to call in if you have questions or comments. The number is 769-1677. So if you're watching live 8 p.m. Monday, February 8, please do call at 769-1677. Our next scheduled regular meeting is Monday, February 22. That's because Village Hall is closed next Monday, the 15th, for President's Day. However, Tuesday, February 16th, the Village Board will be at the Clinton Street Center from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. for the annual tax grievance night. So if you have already filed a tax grievance or seek to do so, you can contact Jim Timmings, who is the assessor here at Village Hall, and get on the agenda for tax grievance night, which is a date fixed by state law, Tuesday, February 16, and we'll be over at the Clinton Street Center from 6 to 9 p.m. So we had a number of announcements I wanted to make, and I'm going to do them in reverse order from the way they were listed on the agenda, just because the last piece is the longest discussion. So the first thing I wanted to mention is that we've received a letter from County Executive Rob Astorino, and I will read it to you and then give you a little bit of the details. It says, "Dear Mayor Shearer, as you know, last year the former county executive and board of legislators approved a stipulation and order of settlement of a lawsuit known as US ex-rel Anti-Discrimination Center versus Westchester. Under the terms of that settlement, the county is obligated to produce a model inclusionary zoning ordinance and to promote it to all municipalities by January 30th. The settlement also requires the county to adopt a discretionary funding policy that would ensure that any municipality that sees discretionary funding, county funding in the future, is committed to affirmatively furthering fair housing, as well as an affirmative marketing plan for fair and affordable housing. Accordingly, each of these documents is enclosed herein. Since Election Day and during the past month of the new administration, my team has worked closely with representatives of the Westchester Municipal Officials Association to gather input regarding concerns of you and your colleagues. While many of those issues have been addressed, bear in mind the county is somewhat constrained by the terms of the settlement. Thanks for your input to date. Be assured that my administration will continue to work with you as the settlement is implemented." Attached to that is a model inclusionary zoning ordinance that goes on for quite a few pages, but the thrust of that is that it proposes a clause for required fair and affordable housing unit component in all new residential developments, and essentially says that all residential developments of 10 or more units need to set aside no less than 10% of the total of units as fair and affordable housing. And that fair and affordable housing definition would be a unit that's affordable to a household whose income does not exceed 80% of the area median income for Westchester. So it goes on to lots of further detail, but that is now a matter on our desk, and we are being encouraged to review this model ordinance and potentially add it to our zoning code. And if we were to do that, it would then apply to any new developments of housing that exist in the village of Pleasantville. I add to that the note that attached to it is the discretionary county funding policy that was mentioned in the letter, which basically adds up to a mechanism by which the county would likely withhold county distributed funds, including community development block grant funds, to communities that did not implement a proposal of this kind. So anybody who has any comment on that over time is welcome to get in touch with us or with Patty Dwyer at Village Hall, and we look forward to working through that, and we'll also forward that, I think, to the Planning Commission for their comment as a potential new piece of policy for the village. As an aside, I realize I should have introduced Annette Tano, who is here pinch hitting for Judy Weintraub, our village clerk, who's on vacation. Annette, thank you very much. Glad to have you here. I also wanted to update the community on the status of the Verizon Fios contract. The board voted to approve that contract last week, or I guess the week before, and the latest report we have is that Verizon has filed it with the Public Service Commission in Albany, which is the next required step. The Public Service Commission is required to ratify that in order to make it, to award a franchise to Verizon, and we expect that it will be on the Public Service Commission agenda on March 25. So assuming that that is what happens in Albany, we expect it would be approved, and Verizon has indicated that they would then start selling the Fios video product in Pleasantville shortly thereafter. And as we hear more, we'll let you know, but that is the status as of the moment. Also wanted to mention that some members of the community have been interested in the proposal that A Home, which is an affordable housing organization that actually recently moved its offices to Pleasantville, has been looking at house, the former Department of Transportation Foreman House, which is on Pleasant Avenue, just south of the Grant Street crossing. It's a house that has been empty for quite some years now and was once part of the Department of Transportation network of houses that they used for their foremen. The proposal that has been floating around for actually several years now is that the state would give that house or sell it for $1 to the county, and then the county would make it available as part of the affordable housing initiatives they have, and in this case potentially sell it to A Home. A press release was put out by the New York State Affordable Housing Corporation that they had today, as of January 28, approved an $80,000 grant to Apropos Housing Opportunities and Management Enterprises, known as A Home, to acquire a single-family home and convert it to a two-family house. That would be the house I just mentioned on Pleasant Avenue. The AHC grant will be used to acquire and rehab a home located at 55 Pleasant Avenue in Pleasantville, which is currently owned by the New York State Department of Transportation, and convert it into a two-family house. A Home will conduct a lottery to select a home buyer and a renter. There will be a deed restriction so that the property remains affordable for 50 years. The household income limit for participation in the program is $94,349 for a family of 4. Total cost of the project is $465,830. In addition to the AHC grant, the project is funded by $100,000 in home funds and $16,000 in lead abatement funds provided by Westchester County, as well as a homeowner mortgage and equity. So that's the status of that. We assume that if A Home proceeds with this, as clearly they will, that the next step is that they would file for a site plan approval with the village. To my knowledge, it does not involve zoning change or a zoning variance, but if it does, it would potentially come back to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a zoning variance. So we'll keep the community updated. I know there's been some interest in that neighborhood about the potential relationship of this house to flood mitigation efforts for the sawmill. And we've had some emails back and forth with the community group over on Pleasant Avenue in that neighborhood that's interested in that, and we'll be happy to keep them up to date. We're also trying to work out a meeting in March with that community group, as well as representatives from the county legislators, John Nona's office, as well as from the state and the federal government. So that's the report on 55 Pleasant Avenue. And then the last thing I wanted to update people on is the review of sanitation that we're undertaking. Those of you who read the Examiner, or perhaps those of you who have noticed signs in storefronts referring to sanitation, are probably aware, but perhaps not fully informed about what's going on that front. The short answer is that we are confronted with the need to buy a couple of new garbage trucks, and we are also confronted with the need to save dollars wherever we reasonably can in an effort to mitigate what will otherwise be substantial tax increases driven by pension increases and loss of revenue. So I thought it might be useful to read to you a letter that was circulated, and then read the response I provided to it as a means of addressing this, and then any of you who may have some comment are welcome to come up or call in at 769-1677. This is a letter that was circulated around the village and may still be circulating. It was unsigned, and I don't know who sent it, but it reads as follows. Hello, as some of you may know, but many of you don't, the Village of Pleasantville is in the process of trying to get rid of our sanitation department and outsource it to a private carting company. Most of these carting companies lock you in at a low rate, and when the contract is up, they raise the price quite substantially, which could end up costing more in the long run. Also, please keep in mind that many of the carting companies will not pick up the garbage in the manner which we're now accustomed to. Many have and enforce very strict rules and regulations. This may also alter the convenient weekly pickup schedules that we now have and appreciate. The disturbing part of this whole thing is that the village is not making this known to residents. It has never even been brought up at a town meeting. They want to do this, and after all is said and done, they will tell the residents about it and then notify us with the new rules and regulations. We will be left with no say, and our opinions simply won't matter. They're doing this without hearing the public's concerns, as in who these people are that will be coming into our yards when on vacation or at work, and how trustworthy they are compared to the guys we now have and can trust, and are choosing which way to save money in the village without hearing other options from us, like spending thousands of dollars to have an architect come in and, quote, look at Memorial Plaza so they can make suggestions on how to improve the farmers market, which is held 1 day a week compared to garbage pickup 5 days a week. There seem to be a lack of priorities being set here. I'm sure there are many other ways and suggestions we can come up with to save money, but we have a lot of luxuries in this village that I'm sure we would rather do without than to lose our garbage privileges. It's our tax dollars. We should have a say in how they're spent. There are many people whose lives will be affected here. Many of our current garbage men have families that depend on them, and they need our help and support now more than ever. Please contact the mayor and village administrator at the following address and show your support to keep our village sanitation workers and to allow the public to come up with alternative ways to save money. Please email this to all your friends and neighbors in Pleasantville as quickly as possible, as they are looking to close a deal in the very near future. We have the right to know. Thank you, your concerned neighbor. And as mentioned, it was unsigned. So the response I circulated to that reads as follows. The letter I've copied below is being circulated around the village. Here's my report. We're confronting the need to buy 2 new garbage trucks in the not-too-distant future, which together are expected to cost more than $400,000. Before we commit to that kind of expense, we need to be sure that our in-house sanitation program makes sense for the future. Most communities do not have their own sanitation division, or many communities do not have their own sanitation division, instead electing to contract with private carting companies. One close-by example of this is Mount Pleasant, which reports both good success with a long-standing private contract, as well as lower costs. Besides, based on the existing Mount Pleasant contract, it appears possible that a similar program in Peeville might save several $100,000 per year. Nobody has made any decisions in this matter. We provided the union with the required notification of our intent to look at this, and we've sat down with the union leadership to discuss it. We're meeting with the union again next week. This was written a couple of weeks ago, and they've indicated a willingness to look at ways to maximize cost effectiveness. As I have said many times, I start with the notion that having our own staff and services is a good thing. When it becomes clear that in-house services are fairly dramatically more expensive than our neighbors' outsourced services, we have a responsibility to ask questions, to find out why, and to assess whether the benefits we receive are worth the extra cost. That due diligence is more important than ever in the current environment, when pension costs are going up 60% and variable revenues like our share of sales tax are dropping. Absent a renewed focus on value for government's dollars, that's a recipe for tax increases that none of us want. In the end, we may decide to leave it the way it is. We may try to partner with the union or to change our existing program, or we may propose an outside contract for some parts of our current in-house operation. The union is understandably concerned, and all of us on the board recognize the value of the people and the services we all depend upon. That's a good foundation upon which to explore how to bring our costs more in line with the realities of the fiscal environment. Regardless of the direction, we'll report on our thinking to the community, and we'll seek input from anyone who's interested. The idea that any of us on the board want to hide this effort from the community is silly. I've talked about this many times and in many settings, and we will continue to do so. For the moment, this report sums up the status. We're looking at options, talking with the staff and union, and looking at the pros and cons of our options. Anybody's comments are welcome. So that was written a couple of weeks ago. We have since had a meeting in Patty Dwyer's office with the union and the union president, as well as one of the sanitation employees, and we met again tonight in a work session at 7 p.m. with the union rep from Albany and the same cast of characters. So I think that we're undertaking the due diligence that we have to undertake simply because we've found a circumstance, and honestly hope to find more circumstances, where there may be an opportunity to save money and to either reduce taxes or to slow the inexorable increase of them. So nobody is anything less than 1,000% mindful of the impact any change has on anybody, and no decisions of any kind have been made, and we look forward to anybody's comment. So if there's anyone in the audience who has a comment on that subject, I invite you to the podium at the moment, so that we can address that, and then we can get comments from anybody who has comments on a different subject. Is there anyone who has something to say? Good. Come up and provide your name and address.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. My name is Bill Schiavone. I live on Sarles Lane. I recognize you.
I recognize you.
I've lived in the village for over 20 years. I also lived in Mount Pleasant. I grew up in Mount Pleasant. And I also had a business in Pleasantville for a little over 6 years. so I'm not a stranger to the village. I'm not looking necessarily for answers right now. I just have a couple of statements and a couple of thoughts. I always thought that Pleasantville was its own village because of the services that the village could provide for a community like this. I've heard comparisons to Mount Pleasant. Mount Pleasant is not a village, it's a town. We are part of the town of Mount Pleasant. If we're going to save money, and you're looking to save tax dollars, which everybody can agree, we're in tough economic times. I wonder if you're looking at or thinking about dissolving the village. That is something where you'll save the taxpayers a lot of money. The other thing I wanted to say is, I'd like to know, and you can think about this, other ways the village and the board are looking at bringing in additional revenue to the village. We've had MLAs sitting idle for years. And having my own business years ago in town, it was never easy for somebody to come into this village and open up a business. There were always a lot of barriers, and it was very expensive to come in here and open up your business. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Let me just touch on a couple of those points. And the first is there are obviously people out there who think we should dissolve the village. As of the moment, I don't think any of them are sitting at this table. So this suggestion that we dissolve the village is a discussion that's going on in various parts of the state. And in fact, the state last year enacted some new legislation that made it modestly easier for community members to foment a referendum on dissolution in an effort to consolidate multiple layers of government and theoretically save money. There's an interesting argument that I think perhaps is probably twisted a little bit by both sides, that consolidation doesn't always save money. But as you pointed out, I think at the outset, there are some aspects of Pleasantville that have been distinctive and that we hope to keep distinctive. And local people doing local services and people like you living here or near here for your entire lives is part of it. So, the decisions we make going forward are based on a very clear understanding that we're trying to preserve the Pleasantville we know, but also tune it up in ways that improve the chances that we'll be able to do that and remain viable in the coming years. So that's a piece of the discussion. Then the other point I want to make is you mentioned MLA, and we've been pretty aggressive about that, including a trip I made to Stop and Shop in Quincy, Massachusetts last summer. The property is now on the market. Stop and Shop has agreed to sell it. There's a for sale sign in front of it and an active interest, we report. It would be a great thing to see that property return to its productive economic use. Candidly, I'm not particularly optimistic that that result would produce a big influx of tax revenue, because the property has been fairly highly taxed all these many years, even though it was empty. So, but by the same token, clearly, both from the standpoint of the overall economy of the community and buffering the risk of a declining value over time, nothing would make me happier than to see MLA back as a productive piece of property. And my last conversation was a month or so ago with the broker. He indicated that he, based on the interest he was seeing so far, was cautiously optimistic there might be a closing as soon as the spring. So stay tuned on that front. Anybody else have anything further on the sanitation front?
Howard Zane, 42 Guyan Street. Good evening, everybody.
Thanks for coming, Howard.
I just want to start off, I may be misinformed or partially informed, because the only thing I really know about this issue, and I'll admit it, is what I read in the newspaper.
Right.
So I'm sure that the board is much more versed on this subject and what prompted it and the various aspects of it and alternatives than I am. And for that, I hope you just bear with me and understand that I'm at a bit of a disadvantage to have a discussion because I don't know. There's a lot I don't know. But again, I do read the newspaper, and my thoughts really were, that was the inspiration for whatever thoughts I have on the subject. So I just wanted to make that clear. I wanted to try to put this $400,000 into a little more context. A garbage truck, when you have a capital equipment in a village, each particular equipment has you assign a service life to it, a particular life cycle. And a garbage truck, you can assume, let's say if it's a 10-year life cycle, the village and communities, what they do, they budget each year. They budget annually an amount. For example, let's say you need $400,000 to buy two new garbage trucks in 2010. Okay, it's not an unanticipated expense, it's an anticipated expense, an expected expense. So for the previous 10 years, what you do, you budget $40,000 a year, and after 10 years, that's not counting interest, that's not counting the salvage values of the garbage trucks that will be replaced. You have your money. Now, $40,000 a year, if there's about 2,000 households in Pleasantville, you're talking about $20 a year per resident, which is about $1.50 a month per resident to maintain 2 garbage trucks or whatever it is in the village. So I think that's a non-issue, personally, as far as the cost of garbage trucks. And from this point, what I'd like to do with the permission, I'd like to read a statement into the record, if I may. Thank you. Garbage collection is an essential public service provided by the Village of Pleasantville. For as many years as anyone can remember, this essential service was provided by the village's sanitation department. Before considering a major change in that long-standing village policy, the Village Board of Trustees has a responsibility to fully inform residents and provide them with a forum to express their concerns. Since privatizing the sanitation department would have some effect on all residents, the Board of Trustees should mail a public notice to every resident informing them of the privatization plan. That notice could indicate the date for a public hearing. The public hearing would be the proper forum for the village to present residents with information and handouts and for the residents to ask questions and to voice their concerns. However, since the Board of Trustees hasn't fully informed all residents or encouraged those who might be interested to participate in the decision-making process, frustrated residents have had to resort to other means of expressing their concerns, such as circulating anonymous letters and writing letters to the newspaper. Those other methods of communication indicate that at least some residents have reservations about privatization. Since the Board of Trustees hasn't scheduled a public hearing on the matter, I would like to explain at tonight's meeting why I'm opposed to private garbage collection. The village's sanitation department has provided my family with excellent service for 35 years. In a letter to the editor of the Examiner, one resident estimated the cost per household to be about $360 a year, which he and I feel is a reasonable price for this essential service. Privatizing the sanitation department would pose new risks for residents. If garbage collection were privatized, and if residents weren't satisfied with the private service, what options would the village have? At that point, it would be very difficult to return back to municipal garbage collection after this activity was removed from the village's operating budget, after the sanitation workers were terminated, after the village's garbage trucks were auctioned off, and after the village awarded the contract. With privatization, taxpayers would need to be protected from paying excessive disposal costs. Due to the intermunicipal agreement between the village and Westchester County, the county charges Pleasantville by the ton to dispose of its residential garbage. Presently, residential garbage is driven up to Charles Point by the village's sanitation workers. How will the village monitor private garbage trucks to ensure that only garbage collected from Pleasantville residents and from nowhere else goes into those garbage trucks before they're driven to Charles Point? Pleasantville is a walking village. Children walk to school. Senior citizens and others walk to the village's shopping areas at all times during the day. Much of the outlying areas of the village have narrow streets and no sidewalks. If the village privatizes the sanitation department, the truck drivers would be employed by a private carting company instead of the village. The garbage trucks would be owned by the private carting company instead of the village, and the garbage trucks would be maintained by the private carting company instead of the village. Wouldn't these changes make our residential streets less safe? Therefore, privatization of the sanitation department isn't only about terminating 5 village workers, as unfortunate as that would be. It's also about the prospect of the Board of Trustees' actions to dismantle the sanitation department and relinquish control of this essential public service to the private sector without allowing residents to voice their concerns at a public hearing. Thank you.
Thanks, Howard. Let me just touch on a couple of those points, and I thank you very much for that. The first point you made was the question of how we fund garbage trucks and whether the village operates on a system of building up a fund balance in order to buy trucks outright or bond them. And what's happened historically in this village, and I think we need to give serious thought to our capital planning in general, and could in the end arrive at a system for certain kinds of purchases more like the one you proposed, is that we've typically bought equipment that was in the $100,000 or less range as a direct expense without any bonding. And we've typically bought more expensive equipment than that through the means of a bond. So that's a discussion that could be had and should be had, but the notion that an additional $20 a year would have to be added to your garbage bill in order to fund over a period of 10 years new garbage trucks is, one way to fund it as compared to the circumstance we've had right now, where we have declining debt service in the sanitation fund, and then at the time we buy new trucks would have higher debt service. The piece of it that I would quarrel with you about is that the cost of buying new garbage trucks is an inconsequential one. Everything's inconsequential if you divide it across all the residents and say, well, it's $1.50 a month or $20 a year or whatever. And yet, if it turns out that a potential savings of $400,000 or $500,000 is always perceived to be inconsequential because it doesn't make a sea change in the overall tax bill, we're never going to get to the promised land, because there's always a reason not to save, not to make a change of some kind. So I say that with the initial statement that we've made no decisions of any kind about whether we ought to do this or not. We are simply comparing the $368 a year per household that village residents pay now with the roughly $100, $110, $120 per year savings in Mount Pleasant, in Ossining, in Rybrook, places like that. So we're surrounded by communities, including Mount Pleasant and Newcastle, that have outsourced sanitation with, they report, good success. A couple of communities have been mentioned to us, and in fact the union mentioned to us that they thought there had been some unhappy results from outsourcing sanitation in Hastings, and we'll certainly pursue that too, but it's all on our radar screen. The issue about public notice and a public hearing is a little confusing to me, because all we have done so far is let the union know that we're looking at this issue. They, for obvious reasons and perfectly justifiable reasons, have run with that ball in an effort to combat the changes that they hope won't happen. But the reality is, we have no hard numbers other than the hard numbers we have from existing contracts in our neighbors. We are talking to the union in what is essentially a union negotiation about ways in which we can potentially narrow the gap between the cost of outsourced services and our in-house services. And although if the union wants to have that as a public negotiation, I think all of us are perfectly willing to do that. It's not the way we've done it in the past in negotiating with CSEA, and it wasn't our intention to turn it into a public negotiation right at the outset. When we come closer to the point of having real solid numbers and being able to lay out with good specificity what the pros and cons are of the various options, keep it the same, outsource some piece of it, change the work rules, change the way we do it, partner with somebody else, any of the above, I can assure you that this board is going to engage anybody who's interested, and for as long as they're interested, to talk about what those options might be. So, the notion that was in that anonymous letter and that you sort of implied that we had deprived the community of the opportunity to speak is the community is absolutely welcome to speak. What we're seeing right now is a response to the union's comments about this, and it's a free country, anybody can say anything, but the reality is we're on a fact-finding mission, and we're on the fact-finding mission that I think we are obligated to be on, which is it looks as though we're paying a lot more for sanitation than our neighbors. Why is that? It may turn out that the numbers that we see right now don't turn out to be true, and we'll be satisfied that they're closer than they look. It may turn out that we do pay more for sanitation and we're pretty sure we get value for the dollar and want to keep it that way. Or it may turn out that there are some things we think we should change, and I'm hopeful that we partner with the union in figuring out how to change those to maximum positive effect for the village and minimum negative effect to anybody. So that's really where we are on that front. So those were my thoughts. Anybody else have anything to say on the subject of sanitation?
I have one more comment.
Sure. Come on, we have exciting resolutions later. It gets better as the night wears on.
Yes, Bill Schiavone again from Sarles Lane. We're going back to looking at the costs of whether keeping sanitation in-house or privatizing it would be cost effective. Maybe this is a question. Are you also looking to see whether the same situation goes for the police in town, the highway department? We have meter maids. Mount Pleasant doesn't have meter maids. So I'm looking to see if you're mentioning, all I'm hearing is sanitation, but are we looking at all the other public services in the village?
It's our intention to look at everything we do over time. We can't look at everything all at once, and we expect to be looking at each department as we go. The reason sanitation came up first is that we have this issue of buying new garbage trucks. It's not an absolute crisis, but I think everybody, including the union, agrees that we have an investment we need to make before long, and so that drove that matter to the fore, in addition to which it's a relatively, I say relatively, I'm sure it'll turn out to be a complicated review, but because we keep it accounted for as a separate budget all by itself, and the reason for that is that we don't provide sanitation services to businesses and therefore don't tax them for it. We have a budget that's pretty easy to look at, pretty easy to identify, and also pretty easy to compare to long-standing private contracts with outsourced options in the neighborhood. So nobody's suggesting we're going to go that way, but we do feel as though we need to get to the finish line on saying we understand what we're paying for, and we're convinced that we're doing the right thing.
Okay, and also, to say that this is something that's brought up and you're just looking into it. If I was employed by the Village of Pleasantville and I was one of the sanitation men, in the economic status we are, I would be doing everything I can, and if I had a union to back me up, if I had neighbors and so on, because my job could possibly be on the line, I think everybody in this room would be doing what they could, because although we want to save money, sometimes you wonder if in economic times like we are in right now is the right time to start cutting more jobs. And I would think that and I guess it's human nature that when you're going through good economic times, everybody's happy and nobody's thinking that things are going to get bad. So maybe when times are better, that would be the more cost-effective way to look at something like that, where these guys may be able to be placed somewhere else rather than possibly, you talked about foreclosures before. You're going to add more foreclosures to this village. And it's I would hope that everybody can do their best to work to an agreement and look at the overall picture and save money but save jobs?
That would be our goal too.
Thank you.
Anybody else on sanitation? Okay, so, oh, Howie?
I appreciate the comments of the mayor. The thing that I'm trying to reckon with is the fact that it's, and I can appreciate the saving, is this is change this is like a sea change in my mind when you start outsourcing and privatizing essential public services. That's extreme. I mean, and when that gentleman mentioned the police department, you know, and dissolution and the highway department, you can there's no reason why the entire government can't be privatized. You can, if the highway department, you can hire somebody to pick up the leaves, you can hire somebody to patch the roads, you can hire somebody to plow the snow. The police department, you know, you can get the town of Mount Pleasant, work out an arrangement. And really, the logical conclusion, whether you want to admit it or not, or say it or not, it's dissolution. And I'm not the first one to mention it, but is that what is that what we want here in Pleasantville? Because I think if the people sit back and just let this process go on, the dominoes are going to start to fall, and the village is going to be it's going to be a village in name only. It's going to be a sign and a zip code, and that's what we're going to. And then, why have a village? Let's just dissolve it, reconsolidate with Mount Pleasant, and be done with it. So that's my feeling. Is I don't know where we're going. I
think you're going from 0 to 60 here.
Yeah.
I think I already said that I don't think anybody sitting at this table is interested in dissolving the village, and I don't think we're interested in doing it by a fait accompli, you know, waving a wand and ending it, and I don't think we're interested in doing it by degrees, so that over a period of time we'll realize that we're sitting at this table and have nothing left to do. That's not what we're about. By the same token, it just can't be that the cost of providing services within the context of government costs a whole heck of a lot more than it costs outside of the context of government. And as I said 6 times tonight in various settings, including some before you were here, we may find out that the numbers we're looking at don't actually prove that point, in which case we'll say, beautiful, we've looked at it, we've done our responsibility, we know what the answers are. The numbers right now suggest that we are paying half again as much for sanitation services as lots of our neighbors. So we just have to get to the bottom line and say, we understand why that is. If we figure out why that is and there's a way to fix it, we should. If we figure out why that is and we think it's worth it, we'll say, great. If we figure out why that is and it means that we have an intransigent union that doesn't want to make some changes, then we're going to sit at the table with them as long as we can to try to work it out. You know, I don't know what the answer to that is, but what I do know, and I can tell you that I've seen it in any number of contexts in my 8 years on this table, and my colleagues I think have too, there are lots of circumstances where government operates as if the real world didn't matter. Well, the goings on in the last year or 2 years have made abundantly clear that that just isn't true, not that any of us ever thought it was. And you know, the reality is the state is in meltdown, and so the community that emerges from this crisis, lean and mean, and I say lean and mean not in the sense of its spirit. I want this to be a generous and supportive community. But by the same token, we are talking about the need to create a sustainable future that protects everybody's job, and there are some real risks out there. I mean, the pension costs alone are, so extraordinary. If the increases in the pension we confront this year, which is about a 60% increase, were going on in the private sector, as indeed they are in some places, you'd have lots of people around conference tables figuring out whether to go out of business. And if the state controller's darkest scenario, which suggests that our this year's pension costs of 7.5% of payroll could go to 35% of payroll, you're talking about, turning off the lights and shutting the windows in a lot of communities. Just shut it down. I mean, we're talking about structural meltdown. So the Village of Pleasantville is in a very sturdy position. This board and the boards that preceded it have done a thoughtful and careful job. We have a healthy fund balance. We have a committed population who like living here, and all of us are among the people that think that. But we do have an obligation to think about whether there are ways to be more economical in the future. That doesn't mean that we're going to do that without understanding that there are sacrifices to be made along the way, and we may decide that the local control of this particular piece of our business is essential to what we do.
Well, I'd like to thank the mayor for his comments and his thoughts. The last thing I just want to leave you all with is that there's such a thing as unintended consequences, where all the best intentions of the board may be, hey, this is just an isolated incident, and then, we don't tinker anymore, we leave it alone. But 10, 15 years from now, we might be looking at this as first step towards that dissolution, first step towards the elimination, outsourcing of the police department. We don't know. We don't know, because this, to me, is the big step. You start taking this step, the next steps are going to be a whole lot easier to take, and it's going to be, you're stepping down a slippery slope, possibly, in my mind. So I just caution the board that you can't always see what's down the road.
On the same hand, you can't walk into things blindly either. You need to walk in with your eyes open. And that's really what we need to do. We have to just look. We have to look. We have to see. We have to investigate. It's our responsibility to do that. I think we've been very transparent with that. This has been on the radar for a long time. Maybe, Mr. Zane, you haven't been to any meetings or you haven't watched the meetings, but this has been discussed a number of times. It's not like we just sprung it on people.
Yeah,
we're a very transparent board. And any allegation that we're not is pretty off base.
Well, there was no intent to make allegations towards anyone. But I just want to make a point that a public meeting is quite different from a public hearing. A public hearing, when people are notified that there's going to be a meeting in 2 months about one subject, privatization, and there's going to be a presentation and a discussion, you're going to fill the high school auditorium if you did that.
Sure.
But if you have meetings here, people are busy, with their lives. They don't know one meeting to the next. You meet every 2 weeks. How do I know that one particular meeting, something significant is going to happen? It could kind of go under, you talk about a radar screen, it slips under the radar screen. So the only thing I think of public...
We notice everything. I mean, we know we spend more time noticing than...
Just going backwards. When it's time to have a public hearing, Mr. Green, we'll have one. What you've heard here is that we're very preliminary. You can't have a public hearing for every step that you take on this, because it may not warrant a public hearing. We may decide that we're going to keep it as it is. So when it's time for a public hearing, as we have done every year that I've been on the board, we will make the community aware. We are well aware of the community's interest in every aspect of major decisions that we do, and we'll do that. There's more places to get information than the Examiner too. So, I would encourage you to broaden your horizons beyond that, and we will go from there. I mean, it is a topic that, everywhere, everything from an anonymous letter, which I think is complete bunk. I mean, if you got an opinion, sign your name to it. I give it no credibility. To editorials in the newspaper, which have all their facts wrong, are just part of the problem that perpetuates a discussion that becomes useless after a while, because people act on emotion, and they don't act on any fact. And I think Peter's done a tremendous effort tonight to inform the community, inform you of all the steps that have been taken, to make it completely clear that we have not made any decisions. We're in a fact-finding point, and when we get enough facts, we're going to do an RFP to find out what actually. We haven't even done that. We don't even know what a Carter's going to charge us, quite frankly, or Carter. So we're going to do an RFP and see what that looks like. we are doing forensic analysis on our budget, because our budget, while it's isolated, there are some overlaps and stuff that we need to pull out of there, so we understand our own budget. And we'll present that to the community if it even rises to that point. I mean, I don't know. I think we're all talking over, we're all saying the same thing now and repeating. So I don't know that there's much. I'll shut up and move on to the next topic if there's nothing new.
Well, I'd just like to thank you all for your efforts.
Thank you.
And I thank you for coming. It gives me a good opportunity to remind people that if you wish to, you can sign up at our website, pleasantville-ny.gov, and opt in for agendas of various kinds, but you can get automatically by email the agenda for the Village Board work session, as well as the agenda for the Village Board regular session, and you get those like clockwork every Friday, and gives you an opportunity to see what's going on, and if nothing's of interest, delete it. If something's of interest, you can appear or watch us on PCTV or watch us live on the web at pctv76.org. Sorry.
No,
Except
don't
PC.
org. It's
Huh?
org.
Either or. Shane reports.
Either org.
PCTV76.com or .org. So it's a great resource to get those agendas automatically emailed to you. And PCTV76 is a great website where you can see live webcasting of the meetings we're having right now, but also on-demand video to pick up and see meetings you may have missed, or to zip forward and avoid listening to me pontificate on subjects that don't interest you. So.
Michelle's got a whole packet over there.
All right. Is there anyone with a comment on another subject?
She's got a whole packet, Michelle.
Michelle Lucia, 386 Bedford Road. I was here at the last board meeting, and everyone here was excited to talk about the four-letter F word, FiOS. Jonathan, I want to thank you for your vote, because I think you did the right thing, so I appreciate that. But tonight I'm here to talk about another four-letter F word, and that F word is FOCA, Sergeant FOCA. And I'm here to ask the mayor and the trustees, whomever can give me an answer. What I'd like to know is why there has been no confirmation from the village of what we know is fact, that Sergeant FOCA was collapsed on the floor in the police station for 6 hours.
I'm happy to answer that, which is that I know the circumstances under which this happened. I've been advised by counsel that some aspects of that may be medically protected information, and therefore it's advised that we, as the employer of Sergeant FOCA, not confirm or deny some of those specifics. What I have said, and I say wholeheartedly, is that what happened that night was not only a tragic circumstance, but also an indication that the system needed to be adjusted, and that has been accomplished, so that an incident like this can't happen again. So.
Okay, so were the surveillance tapes reviewed from the night Sergeant FOCA collapsed?
Were the surveillance tapes reviewed that night? I can't speak to that. I have not reviewed them.
You have not reviewed the tapes. And has anyone on the board reviewed the tapes? Patty? Okay, so then I have to ask, why not?
What would be the purpose of that?
Well, because you would see a chain of events that occurred that led to the officer being on the floor for 6 hours without anyone finding him. So was anybody in the room informed of what was on the tapes? Did the chief tell you what he saw on the tapes?
I'm aware of what's on the tapes. I'm not clear on what advantage that would provide. I think everybody agrees that Sergeant FOCA was alone in headquarters for that period of time, as we expected him to be, assuming he was in an unimpaired condition. What we've changed going forward is that we now have a clear policy that requires not only the desk sergeants to be calling out on a regular basis to the patrol cars if they have not heard from them for other reasons, but also for the patrol cars to do the same. So I'm unaware of anything else happening that night that would require us to pursue that further. Are you?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
That's why I'm here.
Well, why don't you just tell us instead of...
Well, because I want to know what's going on.
Positioning us,
Well,
you know.
because people want to know. Nobody else seems
No,
to
I
come and
don't
ask
think-
questions. So I'm here to ask
What do you
questions.
want to know?
Well, I'd like to know why Detective Peterson came to work at 4:45 in the morning, and why John FOCA wasn't found until 6:15 or 6:18.
Well, how do you, I don't know that. How do
Well,
you
that's
get-
unfortunate.
No, how do you get these times and why
I have
is-
information that tells me that there was a police employee in the building at 4:45 a.m. that's shown on the tapes. So I have to
Did you
ask...
see the tapes, Michelle?
No, I didn't see the tapes. I have to ask why we have a police detective coming to work at 4:45 in the morning. Why is that necessary? Was there a good reason for it? And when a detective comes to
Harvey
work
Peterson comes to work every day at that time when he has paperwork to finish up.
at 4:45 in the
Yes,
morning.
he comes in that early in the morning.
And then what time does he check out? After 8
No
hours of
idea.
work?
No,
Well-
he's a detective and he's a youth officer. He works hours that are
So, all
required
right,
of him.
Michelle.
So here's my
it was
point.
Detective
Why do we,
Peterson.
yeah, he was here at 4:45 in the morning.
Yes.
You walk into the police station. Is it customary to say, "Hey, Sarge, I'm here"? Or are they so autonomous that he just went into his office and possibly snoozed till 6:15 when John was discovered on the floor?
You're making an assertion that I can't comment on.
Well, then
other than to
perhaps you
say
should review the
it was
tapes.
Detective Peterson who found and assisted Sergeant Foca, and we're fortunate that he did.
Yes, we are. It would have been more fortunate if he had been found 90 minutes earlier.
So is that
And
the
it would have been
allegation
more,
that you're
you
making?
know, it
Is
would have
that
been-
you're upset?
I'm not
because,
making allegations. I'm
Well, you
asking...
are, in a way.
Okay, so that's fine. I'm asking, don't you think at this point, I'm coming to you with this information, that it would warrant a look at the surveillance tapes and ask the detective what he was doing coming in at 4:45, and why did he immediately just go into his office and close the doors? Is that what happens when every detective comes to work, or are they required to knock on the glass and
Well,
say hi?
I'm happy to have that, to ask that question, but the reality here is that there are a variety of different police officers on at a given time. Each of them who was involved in this incident has been debriefed about it, and we believe we understand what happened, and we believe that we put policies in place going forward that will make sure it doesn't happen. I'm not sure what your agenda is from that point.
Well, you just said that you went through this whole review, and you know what happened, and people were spoken to, but yet you didn't know that there was a police officer in the building who came to work at 4:45 in the morning.
I can't tell you what time Detective Peterson was in the building. I
That's
can
why I'm
tell you-
recommending you review the tape.
And what would that tell me? Are you asserting that he had a responsibility to have gone into the headquarters, which is not his office, to the desk sergeant's area? I don't know where you're headed.
Well, are they that autonomous that a detective comes to work and just goes directly into the detective's room? They don't have any interaction with the desk sergeant?
I mean, it's a what if. I mean, there are 1,000 what ifs. What if?
I'm just asking
you know,
one.
What if one of the officers on the road had come back? What if a member of the public had entered at night? Any number of things could have short-circuited this earlier, and it would have been a good thing if it had happened. But the reality here is that we are fortunate that Detective Peterson found Sergeant Foca and assisted him, and there is certainly nothing that I'm aware of in policy that would suggest he acted in any way inappropriately.
Well, is there a policy for a detective to come to work and check in with the desk sergeant?
The detectives operate on a work
Autonomous
schedule
level?
that is arranged with their supervisor. You may or may not agree with it, but
Well,
We're
I
not-
don't understand what the need is to have a detective come to work at 4:45 in the morning.
well, I mean, if he had come to work at 9 in the morning, he wouldn't have had the advantage of him finding John. So, you know, the reality here is I'm happy to have a discussion, if you want to have it at another time when we have more information, about whether you think that we have an appropriate number of officers deployed in an appropriate way, but the reality is it's a management prerogative to decide when these people work, and I'm not aware of any policy that affected Sergeant Peterson and his behavior that morning.
I don't, you know, you're making it,
I think it's very unusual that a detective would come to work in our sleepy little village
Why
at
don't you ask-
4:45
you know,
a.m.
we-
and find out an hour and a half later that there is a police sergeant collapsed on the floor. That's my question.
A lot of things about that night were unexpected and highly unusual, and as I
Okay,
say,
hold on, what's your
we
name?
have an obligation and we have seized
Okay.
it to
Hey, how you doing?
correct that problem.
Good.
It's been
Hold
corrected.
on, okay?
So,
Thank you.
Okay. Is there a question from the,
This is Liz Brody. Liz, go ahead. Liz Brody, Robbins Road.
Can I put the mic there?
Okay, I just have a quick question. What if Sergeant John Foka is at the desk and a 911 call comes in, and John is collapsed on the floor, okay? Where does that 911 call go to?
If a 911 call is not answered in the precinct in our precinct, after a certain number of rings, it forwards automatically to Mount Pleasant. And it would have been answered by the Mount Pleasant desk officer.
Okay, and then they would have dispatched a car back to Pleasantville?
Mount
Or
Pleasant,
they would have just...
had that happened, Mount Pleasant has the capacity to switch frequencies and speak to our officers in the cars. And I assume, although it's a hypothetical, that had such a call been bounced to Mount Pleasant, the desk officer would have made contact with our officers by radio, indicated that there was no answer at headquarters, and the situation would have been addressed earlier. As it happens, there was no 911 call that night, and as a result, that didn't happen. But, for the benefit of the community, in any event, in a situation where a 911 call can't be answered at our desk, it gets kicked automatically to Mount Pleasant.
Okay, I was just curious. All right, thank you.
Sure.
Thanks.
Good evening.
Any further comment?
I would just say for the benefit of the audience, the detective's office is isolated and apart from where the sergeant dispatches. So while there's a window, it is perfectly normal, I think, or conceivable that the detectives can walk without going into the actual area where the sergeant is. So
Village Chair,
so that
386
there's that
Bedford Road.
clarity.
I've got a question. Who is the command officer when there's a midnight shift?
The desk sergeant.
The
The
desk
desk sergeant. So you mean to tell me that if a detective who is not the commander of his unit comes into the police department during a midnight shift, that there's no responsibility for that man to check in with the commander on shift?
He's not his commander.
So we have two separate autonomous divisions.
Right, the detective
So the
division is
detectives
separate than
division pretty much sets their own rules. They don't check in with anybody else. If I call the police department tomorrow afternoon, will they be able to tell me what detective I could talk to at what time? Or do I have to actually call the detective division?
I don't know.
I have the
think that's
detectives'
the
phone
problem,
numbers. But if I called the police station tomorrow and I said, I'd like to know what time would I be able to talk to Detective Peterson? Would that be at 4:30 in the morning, 5 o'clock? Should I wait till 7 while he's on? I mean, when you have a command officer, and that command officer is the guy at the desk, any other department that I know, when an officer comes in on duty, the first thing he does is he checks in with that command officer. Now, apparently our police department isn't run that way. It used to be run that way. Apparently it's not. Apparently now we have a patrol division and a detective division. Separate, unequal, but separate. Is this what you're telling me? Is this the way our structure is now?
We have a patrol division and a detective division, and that's the same way it's been for a very long time.
But in prior years, the watch commander was always checked in with when a cop came into the building or left the building.
You know that for a fact? You know that on every shift, that's what happened?
I can't say.
I can't say that.
Can I say that I know that happened on every shift, every single day? No. Did it happen most of the time?
I can't say for a fact whether that did happen or it didn't. I believe what happened in this circumstance is that Detective Peterson had desk work to do. He came in to do it. At the point at which he made contact with the desk officer, he found this situation and he immediately responded to it. We are fortunate that he was there early enough.
Separate issue. How often does Detective Peterson come in that early in the morning?
I can't answer that. I don't know. Right.
And I know, Mindy, that you said that No, he works other hours
No,
because he's
and
a youth officer. I'd like to know, if he's in at 4:45 in the morning, how many hours of overtime does Detective
He
Peterson
has
get?
very little overtime. If you want the overtime hours,
I would like to-
he
I would
would
like to
get
see
it.
last
But
year's.
you know
I'd like
what?
to see
But you're calling out Herbie, and
I'm not calling-
no, you are.
I'm
Because
making-
I'm sorry that this is a tragic situation. We are all devastated about John, including Herbie Peterson, and including the 3 other officers that were also on at that time. So if you want to start questioning Herbie, and you better question the other 3 officers too, and then they can answer to you.
I want to question the entire
But to
police
call these
department.
guys out now
I'm not calling
is
out
wrong.
any. I'm not,
Yes,
I'm
you
not-
are.
I'm
And it's
calling-
wrong
I'm
because these
asking-
guys are devastated.
I'm asking about this one particular person, this one particular
Why just
circumstance,
him?
because this happens to be the person who happened to come in at 4:45 in the morning.
Because he's a detective? Because he's a detective, is that why you're calling him out?
I'm asking, do we have 2 separate autonomous divisions
And we
within our...
answered that.
Well, basically, you have. You've told me that, yes.
Bill, I'm more than happy to get you the overtime records in the detective division and the patrol division.
I would like to see that, because the
We've
patrol
always
were
had
down, what, 5 people now in patrol?
No. We've always had a detective division. We've always had a patrol division.
Right.
They have shared responsibilities as well as separate responsibilities, and that continues to this day. I'm quite certain that the character of the relationship depends on the personalities and on their work schedule in a given day. But as regards this incident, I do believe that we understand what happened. I do believe that appropriate steps have been taken, and I believe that we're moving forward in a circumstance where not only have we protected against that eventuality, but out of this grim circumstance, something positive has come. So
And I hope that that is true.
I know you do.
Going back to the overtime thing, and we've always had a separate detective division, we've always had a separate patrol division. I would like to see comparative overtime for last year and 2 years prior. 2 years prior...
That's public information. We're happy to give it to you.
I would love to see that, because 2 years prior, we had 2 people in the detective division, now we have 3.
I looked at the overtime in December, and it was reasonable and indeed substantially below where it was at various points in the past in the detective division when, at points in history, we had extremely high overtime in the detective division. So
it should be less when you have 3 full-time as opposed to 2 full-time. But where are we in overtime with the patrol division? Because now, how many people have we lost out of patrol?
More than happy to pull those figures for you. As I think you know, we've left a couple of slots open in the police department for reasons of budget. We're expecting another retirement shortly, and if that should happen, we will be confronted with the circumstances of making a decision as to whether that post should be left open or not. As you know, further to discussion we've had on sanitation, we're in the business of trying to run the village as efficiently as we can, and recognizing that that's obviously not a process that can provide certainty, especially in the context of the police department, where the lack of a full-time equivalent in a regular post can end up costing you money in overtime. So that's the balance we try to seek. But what we're trying to do, and what I think most residents would like us to do, is balance the responsibility that the police department has with the need to deliver it as efficiently as we can. The reality is there are plenty of evenings when not too much happens. That happens to have been one of those nights. So we're looking at our staffing arrangements. We're looking at what our options are as far as full-time versus overtime. And we'll make a decision about whether to leave that additional spot open when it comes open by retirement. You got a board that is thinking, I think, thoughtfully about the ways we can set up our police department, as well as every other department, to be efficient as well as economical over the next 5 years. And that includes not only staffing concerns, but also work rules and work policies. And we're thinking about that going forward.
Well, I'm going to ask you in public what I've asked you in private. I would really like to see an outside agency, group, company, consultant take a look at our police department command structure, setup, number of personnel. We've talked about this several times in private.
We have.
I think that this is something that we should look at, because to me, a lot of things that should change stay the same and don't change until something happens. Until there is a complaint, until there is a problem, things don't change. There are 4 instances. When our chief said in a meeting that there's nothing that he could do to stop officers from using their handheld cell phones. They use it sometimes to communicate with the other guys. They use it sometimes in case of emergencies. And yet the very next day, the order went down that they were not to use their handheld cell phones in vehicles while driving unless in an emergency.
Yeah, that's right.
Which was then named the Michelle Lucia rule.
I never heard that.
I know you have asserted that to me. The reality here
And
is.
if it is,
First
more
time.
power to you. I mean,
We
I think it's
wholeheartedly
a rule.
agree.
It
Officers
wasn't
should
said
not be-
in a nice way.
Well, that's a
Officers should
shame.
not be using their cell phones
But
while
it's
driving,
the same
except
thing when
indoors.
we had a complaint about the crosswalk on Manville over by Great Oak. And the chief insisted that there was no way that they could send somebody there during the morning school hour, that just wasn't if he did something and he started putting somebody there, if there was an accident or something happened on a day that somebody wasn't there, we could be liable. Couldn't happen. The next day, there was a cop there.
However, we have not had a cop there on a regular basis. Bill,
But
here's
it's-
what's happened in both of those circumstances. You have a board here of elected residents just like you. We have concerns, we have pet peeves, we have issues we focus on at one point or another, and we focus on them. I can't tell you as you might imagine, in a complicated, highly regulated, highly unionized, highly Albanyized work environment, that we don't have, in many cases, the management control that might exist in lots of other settings. But the reality is, when issues are pointed out, like some of the ones you have described, you've got 5 board members who each in their own way is saying, okay, what can we do to fix this? So the system's working.
And I think that part's wonderful. But the problem is I'm always hearing from the top of the police department the reasons why it can't happen.
Well,
And
and we push back a lot, Bill. Let me
Well,
tell you, we have been
but
pushing
that's
back.
great, but my problem is it's always reactionary. It's never actionary. It's reactionary. Everything with our police department is a reaction to something.
Well, as regards the incident with Sergeant Foka, I am left with the impression that the change in policy will make certain that that can't happen again. But that there was no way to look into the future to predict that an incident like that could happen, and to the extent that everybody behaved the way they've always behaved, we have said, hey, look, and I think they themselves have said, holy cow, something happened here that was a tragic circumstance, and we're going to redouble our efforts to make sure it's protected in the future. So, you can call that reactionary, but I can tell you that.
What if he was driving a car?
A number of, plenty of other officers
I'm not
a party to that too, and I think all of the officers, at least all of them that I've had any contact with, think that the policy changes that have been enacted are wise, appropriate, and ought to be followed.
But my question is, many other jurisdictions have always had that, and I believe we had something similar to it already on the books, never enforced.
That said,
Most people, most jurisdictions that have that enforce it for a reason.
that
Have
enforce
what? What are you talking
That
about?
have a check-in, call-out, call-in, call-out.
we had a policy on the books for call out from the desk officer. In this case, the desk officer was incapacitated and therefore couldn't call out. Whether
We never had one for
Callback.
for callback.
there was no policy for callback,
That's the
there is now.
policy. There is now.
And again, this is where I'm saying this is reactionary. I
I hear you, Bill, but the reality
I've talked to
here.
the chief of police, I've talked to 3 chiefs of police in other jurisdictions. And the primary reason why they had that in place was going back into the 70s when there was an officer from a village not too far from here that was out on a midnight shift, that was in his vehicle, that after a snowstorm, backed his vehicle into a pile of snow,
Carbon monoxide.
didn't realize it, died of carbon monoxide poisoning.
So there was
And-
reactionary. See, theirs was reactionary.
That
too.
was over 30 years ago.
Right.
Yeah, so they
And
learned.
which is why most departments have always kept that up and made sure that it was taken
And it
care of.
happened to
And-
somebody
you
in
know,
a
look,
car.
The responsibility,
God, I wish we had that rule on our books. You know,
I
wish
want
we
this,
had it.
I
We
want
don't.
this
We didn't.
message to you, to everybody in the community, to everybody in the police force. If we have village employees of any kind, cops or otherwise, out on the road, they have an obligation to do what they're supposed to do and to have their whereabouts known. I can tell you that there have been contentious discussions with the PBA regarding management initiatives to institute exactly those kinds of policies so that we know where the officers are, not only so that we're aware of what they're doing, but so that someone would be in a position to intervene if help was needed. So I can tell you, and I dare say the PBA will agree with you, that change of any kind has to be negotiated. We are subject to grievances of all sorts, and if the top brass, middle management, and the rank and file all need to understand, and I hope and believe that they do, that the village is going to take seriously its responsibility, not only to make sure that our employees are safe to the extent that we can assure that, but also that we know their whereabouts, not only for their own safety, but to ensure that they are fulfilling our expectations for them. That's where we are going forward. But regardless of what other chiefs have to say about what other happens in other communities, I can tell you that in this community, change has not been an easy thing to accomplish with the PBA as a starting point. So I do hope, and I'm cautiously optimistic, that this situation will provide an opening there as well.
Well,
And believe me, we intend to use it.
Like I said, I've brought this up to you before. I'll bring it up to you, I'm sure, many times in the future. I really think that somebody from the outside should take a look at that big, thick book that we've got of rules and regulations that runs our police department, and take a look at it and see what's working, what's not working, how can this be managed better, what efficiencies can we put in, what inefficiencies can we take out, what things are in there to protect the employees of the police department and the residents of the village, and what things are in there just because they've been in there for so long we don't know what to do with them.
Well, I can tell you, and I do know that your goal here is to have an outside reviewer, and that's certainly a reasonable request and one we can consider, but we are in the midst of, and actually near the finish line of, an internal review of just that sort. I recognize that that's different from an external review, but an appropriate step, I think, on the part of the village that's been going on for some period of months and is near completion. So I'm happy to consider the proposal you make, and you and I have had this discussion a number of times. It's worth thinking about, and we're thinking about who and how much it would cost and when it would be appropriate to do that, not only in the context of the police department, but in the context of anything else we do.
I'm not disagreeing. There are
Right.
some times where outside consultants come in to, you get efficiency experts, you get outside consultants just to check how you're going about doing things. And since one of our biggest expenses every year is our police department,
True.
it makes sense to me to find out if we are running efficiently, if we are using our labor force the best way that it should be used, if our management is performing at a level that they're supposed to be performing, if, all of those things. And to my mind, I've had several businesses. I still have several businesses. I've done internal reviews of my businesses. I've had external reviews of my businesses. I'm always shocked when somebody comes in from the outside because they point out silly little things to me that I've done forever that are just wasteful things to be doing. Sometimes I find them on my own, a lot of times I don't. And having somebody from the outside with a different set of eyes and a different set of ears that's familiar with the process, when you're talking about what is one of our single biggest line items in our budget every year.
Look, I love the spirit in which you offer that, and I agree and could recount in my own business life the same sort of report. You know, the world looks different from the outside looking in than it looks from the inside looking in. Mm-hmm. I get that, and I do respect the value of that. I think, again, the question is who and how much and when, and recognizing also that we operate in a particular case, the police department, in not only a unionized environment, but an environment that is extremely heavily regulated and in many cases confusingly and contradictingly regulated by what I would intemperately characterize as a rat's nest of rules. So I'm not optimistic that the little village of Pleasantville is going to have much effect on the rat's nest of lousy rules, but I do think, as I said before, that the response to the recent incident with John Foca represents a positive step and an opportunity for everybody to get refocused on not only their responsibilities, but the need to behave in a manner that fulfills responsibilities to one another. So,
Well, and the last word is, I'd like to see somebody come in with a really large comb and brush and take some of the tangles out of that rat's nest, so that
I
we
would too. So
that we
yeah,
understand it.
I would too.
And I don't think that we can that we can do it internally. My own belief.
well,
I don't think
again,
that.
I mean, those issues are in Albany, but as far as our internal policies are concerned, we obviously have got some flexibility. So, I respect that request.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else on any other subject? It's been a big night for comment.
We dare you.
See, this'll teach you, Annette. Huh? The minutes will go on for miles. All right. With that said, let's move to the resolutions. Steve.
Resolution 2010-22, resolve that pre-check registered dated February 8th, 2010, covering check numbers 65563 through 65693 has been reviewed, and they are hereby approved as listed below. General Fund, $148,951.74. Water Fund, $4,164.74. Capital Fund, $157,098.65. Refuse Fund, $79.39.15. Pool Fund, $571.72. Trust and agencies, $1,640 for a total of $320,366.
Is there a second?
Second.
Patty, there are additional payments here to Contech Construction, which is doing the Bedford Road streetscape improvement down near 7-Eleven and Lukoil. How far along are they, and what are we looking at as far as completion?
They are, I would say, 80% complete right now. They have conduit in place for the wires to be pulled for the traffic signalization. The construction, there still needs to be some construction at the intersection here on Bedford Road and Marble Avenue and Memorial Plaza for a pedestrian walk cycle. All of that work will take place in the spring.
So the traffic signals are expected when you say spring. Are we thinking April?
Hopefully soon, hopefully late March, early April, not late April.
Okay, I mean, it's an aside unrelated to this, but we've talked about the intention to move the crossing guard from the corner by Jean-Jacques to the corner of Great Oak and Manville at the point at which the signal's in place.
Okay.
So is that something that imaginably could happen as early as April?
Good, yes.
Because if I'm not mistaken, and maybe you just make a note to ask the chief about it, I think there was a notice requirement associated with a change of that kind.
mean, it could,
Yeah, ask the chief what the story is
whether
there.
it should, you know, we were
uh,
hoping September, it just makes sense to start a new school year with a new post.
Well,
And-
I mean, I guess that will partly depend upon how soon the signals come in and what seems like a reasonable step to take, but at least so we're aware of what our issues are, it'd be helpful to know from the chief what that is. Any other questions or comments on the check register?
The payment here for the music festival, is that
That's
what we owe them?
Yes, the Peeps agreement was that they would recover the first $6,500 in revenue.
Okay,
Well, it wasn't 6,500, just shy of
right.
that.
So that was theirs, okay.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Mindy,
I have
23.
my microphone keeps, I'm going to be with my head on the desk. And Shane, I have a broken microphone. Not that I ever need a microphone. Resolved that the Board of Trustees has reviewed the minutes of the meeting. I mean, if you really can review the minutes of this meeting. Did we all
Yeah, Gone
review
with the
these? Yeah. Of Monday,
Seriously,
January
Gone with the
25th,
wind.
2010, and
Yeah,
Friday,
really.
January 29th, 2010, and they are hereby approved.
Is there a second?
Second.
This is the Verizon.
Right, this is the minutes include
Oh, that stuff is gold.
the verbatim transcript of the Verizon hearing. And the reason we have a verbatim transcript is that Verizon, and I think possibly Cablevision, together share the cost of a professional court-type stenographer. And so as a result of that, rather than have Judy Weintraub try to condense 3 hours of discussion into something that is accurate, we simply bought into getting the big fat record, and
Gosh.
now we will
We bought it?
vote on it and recycle it.
We didn't buy that.
We had
did
to buy it, yes,
We had to buy it?
yes. A relatively modest cost in comparison to the cost of trying to transcribe it, but that's the way these court transcribers work.
Probably could have saved some money if
Another
we'd gotten
Verizon
pulp in some of the
expense.
Con Ed trees.
Yeah.
All in favor on the minutes?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
motion approved. Jonathan, 24.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville hereby accepts donations for the Pleasantville Senior Citizens Program as follows: $1,000 from an anonymous donor and $3,000 from an anonymous donor.
That's very nice.
Is there a second?
Second?
Thank you to anonymous donors. I assume you know who you are. They're very much appreciative. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion
Aye.
approved. Steve, number 25.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville hereby authorizes the village administrator to sign the agreement with O'Connor, Davies, Munns, and Dobbins LLP for a 3-year audit engagement services as per the terms set forth in the proposal letter dated January 22nd, 2010.
Is there a second?
Second?
Patty, this is essentially the same deal we've had for a long time. Is that true?
Yeah, it's a very modest fee increase, about $1,000 a year. And Davies, Munch, and Dobbins have been with the Bennett Keelson Storage Dispensed Division, and our auditors, I believe, over 20 years now. So the scope is the same. I mean, we are required from time to time to change some of the analysis and discussion items, but it covers all of the things that we have to cover with respect to the requirements of the government accounting standards, board's audit standards for local governments.
All right, and just so the public is aware, as an example, the auditing fee for the year 2010 is a basic fee of $32,900. A risk assessment statement of auditing standards is an additional $3,000 for a total of $35,900, and then an additional $2,750 for the Justice Court, and then those numbers increase very modestly for 2011 and 2012. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Mindy.
Is it 26?
26.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville hereby authorizes the village to sign an extended warranty service agreement with StopTech Limited for the Centurion wireless security system as per the terms set forth in the proposal letter dated January 18th, 2010.
Is there a second?
Second.
Patty, What is this thing?
Yeah,
Well, you have a button in front of you.
Yes.
It's part of that wireless system. We have obtained it in the grant about 2 years ago, so we're out of the warranty now.
Mhm.
And this is for the maintenance of the main console, which is down.
And, I mean, the maintenance, is it, why not just self-insure, so to speak?
Because if we have to call them.
I'm kind of constitutionally
I don't know, it's
disinclined to
$200.
sign extended warranties on anything, although I do realize that there are some circumstances where it's helpful to have.
Well, the system's a $9,000 system.
oh, okay.
I mean, it's not cheap. It's not this little buttons.
That little button's a $9,000
Well,
system?
All right, so is it, it's the advice of the chief that we have this?
It's my advice, at least for the first year.
Oh.
I think we should test it ourselves.
Oh, it
I will
works.
accept that advice.
It works? Push it.
So,
We had 3
Who's
phone
on
calls.
tonight? I want to see them run upstairs. No, only kidding. Only
okay,
kidding.
so it's a 1-year extended warranty, and maybe we should give some thought next year to looking at extended warranties in general, and seeing which ones make sense to keep and which ones we might want to let lapse. So, for $300, I accept your advice. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Jonathan?
Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville hereby engages the services of Thomas C. Merritt's land surveyor for the survey at Manville Road and Parkway Terrace as per the term set forth in the proposal dated January 21st, 2010.
Is there a second?
Second.
This is a proposal from Thomas Merritt's, which is a Pleasantville business, for a survey of Parkway Terrace preparatory to a plan to build a sidewalk on the east side of, am I right? North side, I guess. North side of Parkway Terrace,
Northeast.
which Patty was successful in getting a grant for. Congratulations to Patty. Thank you for
Yeah,
that
I'm
effort.
excited about it. It took a very long time.
Right. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved.
We have to match that grant. Sorry.
You what?
We'll have to match it.
Oh,
But we have they gave us.
100, what kind of a match?
25%. They gave us $100,000.
Okay. Steve?
Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville hereby authorizes the village clerk to notice a public hearing for Monday, February 22nd, 2010, Village Hall, 80 Wheeler Avenue, Pleasantville, New York, 8 p.m. prevailing time to hear comments as it pertains to a local law amending Chapter 173 Vehicles and Traffic, Section 17351, Schedule 3, school speed limits as follows. For Ashland Avenue, 15 miles an hour for the entire length, Nanahagan Road, 15 miles an hour from the intersection with Ashland Avenue, 1320 feet east toward Broadway. These would be speed limits that would be in effect during school times.
Didn't we do this
Didn't we already do this?
Yes, and no. We did it by resolution. We didn't codify it. And I'm not sure why, but General Code picked it up and said that we needed to add it to our schedule in our code. So this will just legitimize the code amendment.
Okay.
So are the rules are enforced now?
Rule are enforced, signs are up. We're not
Okay.
doing anything new, we're just getting this in the book.
Paperwork back
Yeah.
up. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Mindy, 29.
all right, why did I say totally different? Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville hereby approves the request from Holy Innocents to close the Tompkins Avenue parking lot to cars from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. for the use of an outdoor recreation program from August 9th through August 13th, 2010.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is this the vacation
Bible school?
that they're?
It is,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Just to remind the public, the parking lot at the corner of Tompkins and Manville, adjacent to the Holy Innocents Rectory, is actually Holy Innocents property, and they lease that parking lot or a substantial part of it to the village for a very small amount of money in exchange for our maintaining and plowing it, and at various times, including times the church needs it, we are obviously happy and cooperative to assist them, and this is one of them. All in favor? Motion approved. Jonathan?
Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville hereby authorizes the village administrator to submit a grant with the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority for a solar electric system at the Department of Public Works facility.
Is there a second?
Second.
Patty, give us the background, and Tom Riley is here, having sat through
I'd be happy to.
a long discussion of lots of other things.
I'm here to assist Patty.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. If you could join me. You might as well go up to the mic
Yeah.
because the back
Tom,
and forth.
you may know, is a village resident and is involved in the solar energy business these days and has been very helpful to us in thinking this up.
Well, this nice solar grant was announced, part of the stimulus funding that came down in the latter part of 2009 under the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, or better known as ARA. They developed a program for small municipalities in the state of New York, and communities like Pleasantville are eligible to apply for projects, to save where we can renewable energy or find some other energy resource savings. Tom brought this to my attention. He had thought that perhaps we had a good application down in Public Works for some solar power. We have a good site there. We have a facility that does use a considerable amount of energy. And we invited Tom to a site visit. We ran some numbers, and it appears that our application, if successful, will end up saving us a considerable amount of money, and we could install a solar panel system on a portion of the Public Works facility, and hopefully get to the point of returning some energy to the grid. So Tom, why don't you go into the detail about, the actual system that you're specifying, and, what you think it'll accomplish for us?
Well, the application's about 80 pages, and we're going to fill it out for you guys. So basically, you just have to allow Patty to be the person that's representing the village. Your application has 100 points that you can score for different reasons, and I'll give you the rundown. It's 40 points for cost effectiveness, and it's based on the British thermal units. And our system is way below specifications, meaning we're giving you a very good price, about $6 a watt, which is, a couple of years ago it was $8.50 a watt. So it's meeting those criteria. So we'll probably get the full 40 points for cost effectiveness. We can also get points for technical evaluation, 20 points. We think we'll score all 20 because we've done about 150 systems in the tri-state area. There are other points, like if you join the climate partnership with the DEC, which I gave you the amendment there, or the resolution, you get an extra 4 points on the application. So there's all these different points. We probably could score in the low 60s, because some of these I don't think will pertain to us, like we're not in an environmental distress zone and economic distress zone. But anyway, we're trying to maximize how many points we can get. We're up against the whole Hudson Valley and Albany region. There's about 16 counties that are vying for about $7 million. So that's the point system. So if that resolution could get passed tonight, that'll give us an extra 4 points. It's basically saying that we're going to join with the DEC and we're going to reduce our global footprint. And
What's required there?
it's very minimal, that one.
Sample copy for the board?
Yeah, they have it.
Yeah, it really is a lot of assumptions about, keeping track of ways we can be energy efficient, be concerned about the natural environment and physical environment here.
Well, we have an energy czar, so that's a good step.
So Tom, do you have a sense for how,
Cost savings?
well, it'd be worth talking about that a little bit just so people hear, but what I was going to ask was what our odds are here if we end up in the 60-some-odd point range.
I think our odds are good because the way these applications happen is they give you very little time to apply.
Yeah,
So most governments don't act fast enough.
right.
So they miss out. So if we act
Uh-huh.
and we apply, you have nothing to lose.
Certainly
but
not.
a no.
Yeah,
But if you do get it, you'll get a system that has a value of about $7,000 a year in energy production for the DPW, which uses about 14,000. So over 50% of its energy use will be done by the sun. And we'll use that green roof that faces south and maybe a little bit of the blower roof.
uh-huh.
There's no shade, it's perfectly clear. It's really a perfect solar application.
Uh-huh.
And that's why I recommended it to Patty, and we're also working with Briarcliff right now, too.
Is there
Went
any-
on their DPW.
Is there any size any minimum size that's required to to qualify for the grant?
No, there's a maximum. They won't give you a rebate on over 50 kW.
And what will this be?
46.
And there's no area requirement. There's some discussion about area requirement for this.
That discussion was an RFP that came down from NIPA.
Uh-huh.
There's like 3 different RFPs that are out right now. This is called 10, which is focusing on municipalities. There's 1613, which focuses on educational and not-for-profits. And then there's an RFP from New York Power Authority that just came out, which basically what it is the Power Authority is going to find huge tracts of land and huge roofs, and then they're going to work with companies like ours to come in and bid on assembling solar, big solar arrays, massive solar arrays, not a 50 kW, but maybe, 300 kW. You're limited to a 50 kW under this RFP. This is money coming from the federal government through NYSERDA.
All right, so there are at least 3 different programs out there currently or within this relatively short time frame.
All right, that's great. Well, I thank you. We're
It's great.
lucky to have you as an ally in this venture, or we might be one of those governments that couldn't move fast enough, so.
No, I think you guys
yeah.
can move. I think you can
Yeah.
save a lot of money. If you look at the spreadsheet, over 25 years of the system, you'll save like $350,000 in electricity at the DPW. So
do
it's a
these
long-term investment in, reducing CO2 and also saving money in the community.
Do these systems require a lot of maintenance down the line?
No maintenance, no.
Yeah.
There's no
Have
noise.
the panels, the panels have become more efficient over the years. I mean, they used to be very cumbersome and difficult to install,
No, it's-
and they're not like that anymore? I mean, I'm just like,
No, I mean,
just curious.
the problem with
Different
solar
types.
power is having access to the sun.
Sun. No.
If you have a big tree in the way, it's like, I'd love to have it, but you have no trees there. You have an
Right.
open space.
Power lines there, so the trees are all gone.
Yeah, but I did a solar
I
analysis.
can put them on my house now.
Con Edison is doing the best they can to
Yeah.
improve your business.
Yes, they're really helping you
Yeah,
out.
no, I heard about that.
We could run solar arrays all along the power lines.
Tom, I have a question too. I mean, your company's relationship with NYSERDA, are you on a state qualified bidder list? How is this working?
Basically, Raw Solar Group is as a qualified installer with NYSERDA, meaning that we've done enough projects in the state that, they know we're a good company and will follow their rules. There's a lot of rules.
Yeah, do I have to bid this project anyway?
No, you're basically working with us. We're your consultant. We're giving you a price, which is part of the actual, application, that we're coming in at a price that's going to help you get the actual
Are
rebates.
these exempt from competitive bids then, under NYSERDA's applications? Because typically, it's a public works contract, we have to bid.
I don't think you have to, because we're working with Somers School District, and it's the same thing. If you read through all the paperwork,
There could be something in there, you're right, that's why I'm asking, because I know under the stimulus program, they have different, different goals, and they're trying to generate a lot of jobs in green industries, so they may have tied something in.
well, we basically have to follow all of the rules and regulations that the federal government puts, out to us, which means, fair wages, and there's pages and pages on what we have to do in auditing to prove that we've done this in the manner that the federal government is.
Yeah, I think when we do go out for maybe an RFP to do the install, however it is that we have to do it on our end to keep the peace for the state auditors, you probably would be one of very few firms that qualify anyway.
But the thing is, you have to read through the RFP. They may reconsider you if you don't go with us. They may say, oh, you want to go with someone else, and then you'll have to reapply again.
No, not that we don't want to, but the law requires us to bid, as far as I know. That's the problem. We have to go out for bidding.
You
Unless
have to
there's
check
some-
with your attorneys, because I know in Somers
I
School
will.
District, they had similar questions,
Okay,
and that they decided
know if
through
you
their
ran into
attorneys
that.
that they didn't have to rebid it,
okay.
that we were actually coming up with the bid and the price that was, according to NYSERDA standards, below what they feel is acceptable. I mean, it was like
Right.
$8,000 per, million BTUs generated, and we were coming in at
Okay.
much lower.
No, the Power Authority, when they have projects, we don't have to bid. They can come in and get the work done, and they credit us energy credits and the like. So this may, it may be similar.
But did you do it at Briar?
We're working with them right now.
And did they do that? Did they take?
No,
care of
no.
So maybe we should check
Yeah,
and
there's
see
something
what
in
they
the,
did.
I'll figure it out. There
Yeah.
has to
Yeah,
be something,
check with
but he's
Philip.
right. I have 95 pages to read, so it's a lot.
Yeah, Philip Zegarelli, we're working with him, and David, who's in
Okay.
the,
Yeah, I know them both.
yeah, so
Where,
they're,
who are they?
Phil is
Oh.
manager.
Manager.
David's
Go slower,
engineer.
Briarcliff.
Yeah.
Slow it down over there.
they're actually moving forward too. I got an email
I
from
know.
them today, so.
So
But
when-
I
Worried
just,
about.
I mean, this is the first we're seeing of the Climate Smart Initiative resolution, so when would that have to be passed in order to give us the points benefit?
Tonight.
I think you need to do it tonight as well, so it goes in with the
It's the first
application.
we've seen of this. I don't
Yeah.
know that we're in a position to do
I
that.
wouldn't vote on this tonight.
What's the timeline?
I would vote on this, I don't want to vote on this.
That's fine. I'm just
But
trying to
it's only
improve your
points.
application.
What?
It's only points, and it's 4 points. It
It's
just,
4 points that, I read 100 of things that look like this, and
Yeah, I do think we're gonna have to read this with more care. If we vote on it and pass it at the next meeting, can we add that after the fact to our, as a,
May be able to.
I don't think so.
No.
NYSERDA is pretty bad about this stuff. I mean,
Can't we pass it conditionally? And give us a chance to read it tonight, and then send you an email tomorrow if we have an objection?
I thought you were going to say conditionally on getting the grant.
yeah.
I would leave it off
Well,
totally then.
Or
Yeah.
conditionally on getting the grant, yeah.
Yeah.
It's 4 points, I'd leave it off, I'm not gonna, well,
that's fine. I'm just trying to improve your application.
I mean,
You can-
and you know.
I'm
and
all in
I-
favor of
and I-
approving the
I have
application,
to
but
tell
I
you,
do
almost
think.
everything coming out of the federal government today with funds, any type of funding opportunity requires that we make certain representations that we are promoting, you know, or we're undertaking efforts to reduce our carbon footprint
and that we agree that the world's gonna end if
greenhouse
we don't
gas
do it.
emissions.
Now,
That's
Mitt.
usually the first paragraph in these things.
Well, when I
I
spoke
see.
with DEC, because I did talk to them about, you know, how people are being, you know, cautious about spending any money and manpower to go through all these, analyzing your carbon footprint. It costs money if you have to put someone there that said, you know, it basically
You
says
could
you'll
apply
set
for
up
a grant for that, too.
No, you set up a committee, a community group of people that will volunteer and help you reduce your footprint. But they don't require you to do it. It's just they're asking you to set up a committee to at least make an effort to, of the 1,500 or so communities that could do this, the DEC told me they have under 50. So they're really trying to, you know, promote people, you know, being accountable for how much diesel they use, how much electric they use.
Well, and rightly so, and we've got folks from Green Peeville as well as from the Conservation Advisory Committee who are interested in
Well, they could be your
similar sort of
committee
efforts
that,
here.
you know, could go through and just help you keep an audit on, you know, how much stuff you're using, how much fuel and electric.
Well, a lot of them do have that, you know, they want you to incorporate it. They just don't want a recommendation. They want to see where, you know, how you're incorporating it and with what. They want to see the results. You just can't.
No, they're not that stringent. DEC, I talked to the head of this group, and he said, listen, we're not going to hold your feet to the fire.
I don't.
Where
I
the
trust
climate
you,
committee's a
Tom,
little
but
tougher.
Sorry, but I'm not.
No, you don't, listen, you can do whatever you want. I'm just saying, I'm trying to make your application.
The other thing is, I think we're looking for a matching contribution. Maybe Tom suggested $5,000.
Well, yeah, that's
Yes.
another thing in the application, that if you put some money towards the system, you can get up to 12 points.
And 5,000 would assist that?
I would put in maybe, you know, 15.
We said 5,000
Yeah.
to be very
15.
conservative.
Well, if we
15,000.
put in 15,000, the return on investment is 2 or 3 years, right?
It's 2 years, yeah.
Yeah, 2
yeah.
years. I think it's worth
I mean,
15,000.
and would 15,000, is it clear how many points you would get for that level of investment?
Let me see. It's definitely worth it.
So they simply write down your grant?
It
on-
says, yeah, so it's 12 points for cost sharing, amount not to be funded through the RP. Percentage of project costs, it just says, so you're gonna put in, you know, a percentage. It doesn't tell me how they actually judge
So we're
it.
like at 5%.
Well, so just for the sake of argument, a 10% contribution would be $27,500.
That would really make, you'd probably get all 12 points, but I don't know. I'm not on the committee that's judging points.
And that is a payback time in, give or take, 3 or 4 years.
Yes, you're going to generate about $7,000 a year in electricity at current NIPA rates, which I
That's
think are
worth it as well.
14 cents.
Not knowing how the balance works, I'm preliminarily inclined to think that that level of investment is perfectly appropriate.
Oh, yeah, that
With
would-
the payback, and if in fact it generates enough points to win us the grant, we're investing $27,000, we're getting back $250,000 in a grant, and our investment is paid back in 3 or 4 years, that strikes me
What's not to like?
as a win-win.
Yeah, you're gonna generate over 25 years, like I said, about $350,000 in electricity.
At current grade rates.
Well, at grid plus about 5%, increase over the next 25 years is how we factored that. Current grid,
All right, how does anyone else feel about that level of investment?
I'm there.
Okay, you need a resolution for that, Patty, or?
I think
simply-
in our resolution, just add to it a matching fund contribution not to exceed 10% of the grant.
Well, I think we should call out a specific amount. It's $27,500.
yeah, because when we fill out the application, it does break down like cost of system minus, what you guys are gonna put into it, because that's what we're gonna apply for in the RFP. We're gonna
Okay,
say,
so
it's-
27,500, that's
Okay.
fine.
Did you move that, Mindy? Who moved number 30?
Me.
I'm sorry.
Jonathan?
Well, no, I read it,
You read it? Okay.
yeah.
So you moved it.
So I must move it, yes.
Okay, and we'll amend that
Seconded.
to say, and including a village contribution of $27,500 as a cost sharing.
Yeah, it's cost sharing. I really think that'll help your application, because I know a lot of communities don't want to put anything down. They're just
Okay.
hoping they're gonna get it, and
All
this will
right, so
definitely make
that's
your
acceptable to the
application.
mover and the seconder.
Yes.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. Tom, thank you very much.
Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you. Let's hope we get it.
Yeah, I hope
Yes.
so too. Thank
Like-
So we
you.
have to have it in by the 17th. So we should have all the paperwork done this week.
Okay, now,
Your
we're not here on the 15th. We're closed
Because it's
on Monday.
President's Day.
That's right.
All right, but I'll be here Friday and I'll be here
I think Friday will.
Tuesday.
Can we come Friday?
If you can come, or we have a meeting, am I joining you Friday, that meeting at Mr. Astorino's office?
Yes, wasn't that the bottom line in that
I know, it
exchange?
was up to you.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so what time is that? I'm sorry, I'll let you
Hold
know,
on.
Tom, because,
Is John there?
I think that was a morning meeting, just so I can catch up with you.
8 a.m.? No?
Hold on,
Yeah, Mindy.
I don't think it was. 9:30.
Okay,
9:30.
9:30. So I'll be out in the morning.
I don't think so.
I'll be in early afternoon, and if you want to just email something to me, I could even look at it for you over the weekend if there's something we need to do, and I can get it back to you on Monday. It's not a problem for me, but just the office is closed,
It wasn't-
Yeah, we were trying to get it in, it has to be in Albany.
And there's no mail on Monday,
It has to be in Albany, the 17th by
Right.
5 o'clock.
so you'd have to FedEx it out on Tuesday,
Yeah.
unless you want me to sign
Unless we
something.
can get it on Friday.
Right, we can sign something on Friday.
We may have
that's
something
fine.
before Friday that I can have
You're
you
gonna be
look over.
snowed in the next 2 days. It's
We
all
are?
you're gonna work on is this application.
You can't even get to Briarcliff.
You're not even gonna be able to get to Briarcliff.
Can't even get to Briarcliff. I
You can
love it.
cross-country ski there.
Look, they got
Oh, God,
$19 million
you're so-
for
Yeah,
the water.
let them use their water money.
They want this as bad as you do.
Water wheel.
They can heat their water with solar panels,
That's
all that
funny.
All right.
$18 million
Oh, the
worth
other
of
thing,
water.
just one other thing. I know you talked about Newcastle.
Yeah, that's on
Possibly.
tonight as well. We're being asked to support a grant for the Millwood treatment plant, about $135,000.
Through this RFP?
Yeah,
You don't have much time.
they're doing the application.
But you have,
We're in a
so they want
partner.
$135,000 from us?
Basically, as a partner relationship, they
That's
want
fine,
us to
because you can
yeah.
get up to 500.
I know, well, I sent them your email, I told
Yeah.
them we've got something going here, and they said they will apply in full for their ozone generators. They asked
All
us
right.
to support this other project, so,
So you're still under the 500,000.
yeah, so we can, hopefully save some money on both ends.
Yeah,
Did
that
you
would
work
be
that
great.
thing out with the school? Like they're not eligible for the,
No, they're eligible. They just didn't respond quickly enough.
oh.
So Somers responded right away, and they may end up getting 100 kW, 2 systems that we're applying for. Because they were quick to respond. They only give you this tight window.
Yeah, I know.
true.
Of
It's just
60
terrible.
days.
Yeah, I know.
From the time they start it. There'll be another round,
Oh, yeah.
but what happens is,
It's not as much
if
left.
everyone else applied for the money,
Well, and quite frankly, these are so technical. I saw this grant, looked at it, and said, well, where do I go with this? You
It's
have to
over
hire
your head.
somebody to put
You
the
have to hire
application.
That's the
someone to
problem
put
with
it
a lot of
together.
these now. They're so,
Yeah, I mean, we don't have the expertise in this
No.
area, not even to do the analysis, so
right,
I
to
appreciate
price it
you.
out. How would you know how to price
We would
out
not know.
a 46 kW solar electric system?
We'll call Tom.
Yeah.
Now we know.
Call Tom.
Yeah.
Good.
thank you,
Yeah, it's
Tom.
going to be good.
Yes.
All right,
Great.
Just the beginning.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for all your help.
Further evidence of interesting work going on throughout the village
Yeah.
of Pleasantville. So- All right,
Many thanks, Tom. Thanks for waiting.
Jonathan, number 31.
No, he did.
Oh, sorry.
My turn.
It's Brian,
Our late arrival,
our late arrival.
back from the
And we
Midwest,
missed him.
trustee Skarstad, who is
They
signing
let you
the
in
meeting.
there? They let you in that state?
Tulsa, Oklahoma. Thank you.
I'm surprised they let you in
Spent my
that
day.
state.
But I'm glad to be back. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville hereby authorizes the village administrator to sign the proposal from Professional Consulting, Inc., 1719 Route 10, Parsippany, New Jersey, for a chlorine disinfection facility as per the terms set forth in their agreement of January 26, 2010.
Is there a second?
Second.
So this is a review of a matter we discussed last week, which is a $4,500 lump sum preliminary design report to examine the location and equipment by which we would add a device that can inject chlorine into our water supply as needed. Currently, when that needs to be done, it is done in a manual manner, and that will, at some date certain in the future, no longer be an acceptable option under the health department rules. And so we're engaging PCI to look at what our options are and recommend the appropriate response. Is that a fair description?
Yes, it is.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved.
Lopez.
Steve.
Resolved, the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville hereby authorizes the village administrator to sign the Second Amendment Wireless Communications Site Lease Agreement with T-Mobile for the purpose of allowing up to 6 wireless carriers to sublet space upon the existing monopole located at Castleton Street, and be it further resolved that said authorization is contingent upon the village board approving the terms and conditions of a separate sublease agreement with Metro PCS, and 2, the Planning Commission amending T-Mobile's existing special permit to permit additional carriers.
Is there a second?
Second.
Patty, you want to describe this?
Yeah, we had been asked last fall if we would entertain an additional carrier on the monopole down by Public Works. There are currently 5 carriers.
I thought the limit was 5.
The limit was actually 4, and there was an amendment to the lease to allow a 5th.
But I
Verizon
thought
just signed up.
technically the limit was 5.
Well, yes, I understand what technically the limit still is 5 for internal antennas. This company, Metro PCS, came by last fall and said they wanted to mount an exterior
Okay, right,
antenna,
right.
and they would put some sort of a sheath on it where it would be essentially invisible unless you stood under it and noticed it was, a little bulging at a certain point of the, of the pole.
They're putting branches on the trees, Brian.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not
That's what I'm
that
worried about.
offensive from what I'd seen, but, it's different. It's different than what was approved. So the
This
question
was-
came to this board whether or not you wanted to allow it, and you said that you really didn't see an issue as long as
Right.
it wasn't visually offensive, so.
This discussion of this monopole and the screening and so on was a big deal. And, I saw their description of what they want to do, and it sounded to me like they were that this is essentially a subterfuge of the one and only reason why the planning board allowed that facility at that location. That is essentially its invisibility. And when you go down into that public facility area, you have to look for this pole because it looks like a big flagpole without a flag on it. But we had a lot of discussion about color and looks and all that.
I bet, yeah.
And I wouldn't have a problem. I had less of a problem with considering this if the planning board had already looked at it and given us some feedback on how they feel about it. you know, to me, I have no idea what it's going to do to the appearance of that very benign pole that's down there now. And I can say that I see some of the most horrific-looking cell tower arrangements on arrays around the, you know, the county and elsewhere. Some of the worst of which are those phony Christmas trees they like to stick up on a pole.
Yeah, I know.
They look like, you know, the plastic ones. Yeah, they're awful.
So the sheath goes on the whole pole?
Well, you know, the arrays themselves are maybe 4, 6, 8 feet, and you know they are those. They look like large Venetian vertical blind things around the pole, and it sounds to me like they're going to put that on and then sheath the outside of it.
So the whole pole is going to be
going to have a fat part.
Fatter.
It's going to have a wraparound.
That's what I envision it too.
Yes.
Yeah. They have an illustration, but that's exactly what it is.
So, Patty, what is the purpose of our passing this resolution prior to the Planning Commission review?
Well, they can't go before the Planning Commission unless you conceptually would allow another carrier to be on that site, because...
Well, why can't we simply verbally express, short of resolution, our opinion on that subject, and in the event that we are uniformly of the view that we would allow it, so long as the Planning Commission is comfortable with it?
That's basically what
And
this
it goes,
says.
well, except that this ratifies it, and I think would make it automatic upon approval by the Planning Commission. My point is, further Steve's point, it's possible that some discussion that would arise in the context of the Planning Commission public hearing might change our view of it too, because we really don't know that much about it.
I would like to know if we I'm not saying that I'm for it or against it, but if we said no to this, do they then have the right to go and erect another tower some other place on a, downtown Pleasantville or something? Or they have certain rights. And what we tried to do, remember how this happened? In fact, maybe I was on the Planning Commission when we originally dealt with this. I think
they came in with maps showing where different
There were cell
poles.
phones then?
Yeah, just different kind. Extreme,
The big
extreme
giant ones that you had to like push
But I mean, the point,
Side.
remember they wanted to put it at the post office.
That's right.
And we
That's right.
said no to the post office, and we tried to, we decided, we found sort of an equivalent place, but they had the right to do it at the post office. We had the right to say, no, you can't do it there, but we're gonna provide you with a better place.
Yeah, there was a lot of federal regulation involved probably in the 90s, and these things started proliferating all up and down.
Right.
The
But
highways.
they have maps that show the overlap of different mobile
But I'm
cell
worried if we say no to this, then
tower
they can,
locations.
then T-Mobile can say, well, or whoever this is can say, well, we have the right to put it up. We have the right to access coverage or provide coverage, and we're just going to do it any way we can.
The point, though, as Peter is raising with the planning board and with the question you're raising, this is bald enough that we don't know the answers to some of those questions.
These are big issues.
But what's the income we receive off of this?
Oh, it's significant.
It's significant.
Right, so
it would
can we say yes and put it over to the
Be
Planning
about
Commission?
$30,000 a year.
Per carrier?
Yeah,
How much a year?
30.
And this would, in the end, produce, I think that the resolution is wrong. I think it's up to 7 carriers, because I think the way the contract reads, it's T-Mobile, which is the main tenant, and 6 additional.
Okay.
Am I reading that correctly?
I'll have to look, Mayor. I wasn't familiar with the original lease.
They say 7 existing,
Well,
according to the
the
drawing,
confusing
7
thing-
existing and 1 proposed, so that's 8.
Well,
6 other
Look at the drawing.
telecommunications providers. Yeah. 6 others, so you're
There are
right.
others, but Verizon has 2.
at the bottom of the first page, section
it's-
2, it says, the first sentence in paragraph 5B is deleted in entirety, replaced with the following. Tenant shall construct its monopole tower flagpole to allow for at least 6 other telecommunication providers to place antennas. So,
Verizon may count as 2, or as 1, Jonathan, but if you look at the, at the diagram here, I mean, I'm counting 8.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not,
Verizon's got 2, but they're only paying.
we wouldn't be sending this
It's per
executed,
carrier.
we wouldn't be sending this executed lease back anyway.
No.
until approval by the
That's
planning
right.
commission.
Yeah, it has, the next step would go to the planning commission. So, I mean, you could amend the resolution just to refer the matter to the
Why do we
planning
need a
commission.
resolution at all?
I think it should be referred for comment, review and
Refer
comment.
it.
I mean,
I mean,
we don't
it
need a
doesn't-
resolution to refer it to comment, do we?
Well, I
You want a
wouldn't do
paper
it. I
trail
wouldn't
on it?
do it at the board,
Yeah.
authorizing it to be referred.
I mean, my sense of it is we should simply table this resolution with the guidance that we're
That's fine.
inclined to be supportive of this so long as the planning commission is, and so long as issues are not unearthed in the course of that review that would cause us to change our view.
The problem with putting an approval ahead of time is it goes to the board, the planning board, then they think, it's
Exactly.
already been, we're just rubber stamping
I
this.
was just going to say, I think we should really indicate to the planning commission they should
Yeah.
take a thorough look at this.
Exactly.
You know, we are not indicating any approval of this.
All right,
They-
okay, I got it.
Great, so that's been taken.
And if they turn it down, direct them to me, I might have a piece of property that I'll take the $50,000 a year if it come from, over around Ashland.
All right. Brief hiatus while Shane changes the tape. Welcome back. Sorry for the brief hiatus. Shane needed to change tapes because we ran along tonight. Motion number 30, resolution number 33, Mindy.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville hereby supports the grant application submitted by the town of Newcastle for ozone generators and a solar wall at the Millwood Water Treatment Facility, and further authorizes the village administrator to execute the partnership agreement form for said grant to be submitted in partnership with the town of Newcastle.
Is there a second?
Second.
So Patty, this is the same grant
It is the
program?
same, it's the same grant program. As Tom mentioned, there's a $500,000 limit per municipality per region. So since we are already applying for $275,000, we would have to cap our support for this project as well. But what Newcastle's asking us to do is support their project for the solar wall at the water plant. I'm not familiar with exactly what this thing will accomplish. I haven't seen the application, but they're asking us to support it in the amount of $135,000. It's not our matching requirement, that's just what we're asking NYSERDA for on our behalf as part of a partner with Newcastle.
Okay, and are we fearful that it would diminish our chances of getting the other grant?
No.
Okay, all right.
It'll probably be more successful being a partnership.
Right.
So, for those who may not know, the village is a partner with Newcastle in the Millwood Water Treatment Facility, and the opportunity to get not only some solar power there, but also to replace the ozone generators, which are needing replacement at our last visit, would be a good thing. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Jonathan?
Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville hereby approves the attached budget amendments, of which there is one, which is basically moving $2,974.43 from the music festival budget line, revenue budget line, and to increase by said amount the festival expense line.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. That is the end of our resolutions. I had one other notice I wanted to mention that I probably should have said at the outset, and that is there are a number of grandfathered subscribers to Cablevision services who have continued to receive a subscription to TV Guide. Cablevision has written to me to say, I write to inform you that effective Wednesday, March 3, 2010, all customers who subscribe to TV Guide magazine through Cablevision will be charged $3.99 per month for the publication. The subscription was a grandfathered service that's no longer available through Cablevision. Currently, some customers receive the TV Guide for free or pay $37 annually for the weekly publication. Customers are being notified that this price change in advance by mail. If you have any questions, please contact me. So anybody who gets TV Guide from Cablevision was either getting it for free or paying $37. They will now pay $3.99 a month, or about $48 a month. And if that concerns you, contact Cablevision. It's a matter that we have no control over, but wanted to make sure you were aware.
Didn't they used to publish TV Guide in Pleasantville?
Yes. Way back when, along with the Reader's Digest.
Yeah.
I don't know, I have to talk down here now because my microphone is broken.
All right, there being no further business.
Shane.
After a long meeting, I thank you very much for your attention. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So, second.
Second. All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Motion adjourned. Thank you for your attention. Our next regular meeting is Monday, February 22nd. Have a good couple of weeks. We'll see you soon.